What's up, marketers? Today's video is going to be all about blended ROAS. I'm going to dive into what this metric is, why you need to be tracking it, and why it's a good duct tape solution for iOS 14. Additionally, I'm going to be joined by a colleague of mine, Heather Heddens, to discuss the agency perspective on blended ROAS. She's also going to be breaking down some blending ROAS data for you based on 5 brands in the D2C space, which is really cool. But before we go chat with her, I want to iron out some blended ROAS basics and discuss how media buyers should be tracking this metric. So number one, what is blended ROAS? First things first, ROAS means return on ad spend. For instance, if you have a ROAS of 3 on Facebook ads, that means for every $1 you put into the platform, you get 3 back in return. Blended ROAS, on the other hand, zooms out from platform-specific metrics and takes a look at your advertising as a whole against your total revenue. So it takes your total revenue, likely coming from Shopify, and divides that by your entire advertising spend. So everything from Facebook ads, Snapchat, TikTok, Google, Bing, etc. So in the instance of brand one, they spent $70K on social, $34 on Google, which equaled out to $104 in total ad dollars in February of 2021. This brand then had a total blended ROAS of a 1.12. Something else I want to point out here is that there are a few different names for blended ROAS. I've seen other marketers or brand refer to this as MER, or marketing efficiency ratio. I've also heard other marketers call this a ecosystem ROAS. But essentially they're all the same thing. So the big question is, how can blended ROAS actually help brands once iOS 14 is finally launched? Because again, we know that when Apple launches that ATT prompt, we're going to experience a massive loss of signal on the ads manager side. So what can advertisers do to not only prove the worth of their services, but still grow and scale businesses? And the thing that's key here is it's all about knowing your goals. And previously, we as advertisers had very platform-specific goals. Reach a $50 CAC on Facebook, reach a 4 ROAS on Snapchat. That's how we used to optimize our campaigns. But now we're gonna have to step back and take a look at our revenue and ad dollars as a whole, because the data that's gonna be inside of our ad accounts is no longer gonna be accurate or up to date. So I would recommend all advertisers to pull their monthly blended ROAS numbers for the last year. And once the ATT prompt rolls out, this is going to be your new North Star metric to determining the success of your advertising. Essentially, you're going to be using this number to determine the overall health of your advertising. And you're going to have to do a little detective work to extract important learnings from your tests. So say your month-over-month blended ROAS is consistent or trending more positively. This is probably a sign that you should increase your spend and that your advertising dollars are doing very well. But something else we're going to want to do is take a look at all the marketing changes that were made that month. Did your blended ROAS spike or decrease when you launched a new creative test? Or when you changed something on the website? Or because of an influencer push? Advertisers and business owners are going to need to keep a much better captain's log of the changes that they're making across their marketing efforts as a whole. In this way, you're going to be able to better analyze what is having a positive or negative effect. So what I like to do every time I make a change in an ad account, I actually make a note in an internal Slack channel. This way, number one, it's incredibly transparent and keeps me honest with my team. And 2, I always have a log of the time and date of when I made changes that's really easy to refer back to. Next up, I want to introduce you all to my colleague Heather, so you can take a peek at a conversation we recently had about blended ROAS, so you can understand the agency's perspective and also how we can use this metric to inform our advertising strategies. My colleague Heather is a growth team lead at Thesis, and she specializes in all things paid social. She runs Facebook, Snapchat, and TikTok ads for some of the top brands in D2C. She has a wealth of knowledge from working more than 5 years in the marketing industry, and much like me, fell in love with paid social because of its ability to rapidly grow and scale businesses.
Heather, welcome. Number one, you've been kicking out some awesome content for Thesis lately. If you guys haven't been looking at Heather's articles, I'm going to link a few more below. So be sure to check that out, because she's balancing the perfect amount of data-driven content with just fabulous marketing industry insight. Today, we're going to be talking about MER and blended ROAS. So Heather, can you give us a breakdown on what is MER or blended ROAS?
Yeah. So first off, thanks so much for having me, Dara. I'm excited to chat today. I'm excited to represent Thesis. Yeah. So just jumping right into what is MER, what is blended ROAS. It's nothing new. It's revenue divided by marketing cost. So typically we look at this right on Facebook as ROAS as, conversion value divided by Facebook ad spend. That's no longer a reliable metric, or it's becoming a less reliable metric over time. So we're making the shift, and we're now moving to look at the back end numbers, what clients are seeing on Shopify, for example, and we're really looking at that total revenue divided by total marketing cost.
So I know a question that we're going to get from a few of my viewers is there a good blended ROAS number or one that people should generally reach for?
Yeah, I wish that there was a golden number. I think that everybody does. It really varies vertical to vertical, client to client. It very much depends on the industry that you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like the same thing that we used to look at for Facebook ROAS, right? Like no Facebook ROAS across industries is like the golden number. There's no golden number for any single client. So it really is dependent on like your margins and what your goals are. Like if you're on a fast track to being scaled, then you're going to have a little bit lower like blended ROAS or Facebook ROAS goals so that you can achieve that scale faster. I'd love to give people like insider tip, but how are you tracking blended ROAS for our clients?
Yeah, the way that I prefer to do it is by pulling all of my metrics into one place via some kind of external app. My favorite is Supermetrics. I love Supermetrics. I couldn't live without it. They are not sponsoring me. I just like them that much. I really like Supermetrics. And what that basically allows me to do is to pull all of my metrics from Facebook, from Google, from Bing, from TikTok, from ultimately Shopify, which is our source of truth or whatever you're getting your back-end numbers, and get them into one place and look at them all together in the same location.
Yeah, I mean, and so sorry to like plug the affiliate link, but I do have an affiliate link below for Supermetrics. It's 25%, it's 20% off if you want to sign up. And that's what agencies are using. That's what we use at Thesis, and it's what I've used at previous agencies. So if you're looking for an all-in-one reporting and tracking solution, Supermetrics is it. So thank you, Heather, for that totally spontaneous plug. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
How important do you think it is for business owners to track blended ROAS in 2021? And especially like, how does it tie into iOS 14, which is like the big question at the top of media buyers' minds right now?
Yeah, ultimately, I think the reason blended ROAS is so important is that we as advertisers need a source of truth. And we're losing that accuracy across platforms. Not just one individual platform is going to be impacted by iOS and the iOS 14 updates. They all are. And ultimately, we don't know what that's going to look like or what's going to happen after that goes into effect. I don't know what that's going to look like. You don't. No one at any agency does. No one at Facebook does, because we ultimately don't know how many users are going to opt in or opt out of tracking. So the metric that we can use that we know is going to be the most accurate is just looking at the back end numbers. What profit are we actually making? And is the advertising cost that we're spending worth that return?
Our job is becoming more and more like billboards in a sense. Like people are really worried about how iOS 14 is going to be affecting their business. And, some people are super doom and gloom and super pessimistic and thinks it's going to crash everything that, we've been building on Facebook ads. And in some sense, we are going to have a big adjustment period. But I think the biggest things that are going to be taken away from that, at least in the beginning stages, is just a sense of certainty and attribution about what our ad dollars are actually doing. So, I think that's a great point. And I think that really looking at blended ROAS is one of the best things that you can do in terms of like prepping yourself for iOS 14. So pulling those numbers even over the last year. Another suggestion that I would have is also to install a post-purchase survey if that's something really easy for you, or if you're on Shopify. What we found too is that, about 50% of people will be filling out this post-purchase survey. So you have to multiply those numbers by 2 to get a sort of sense of truth where people are actually coming from. But yeah, there is just a lot less certainty in media buyers and business owners' future. Which leads me to my next question. What kind of decisions do you think can be made from blended ROAS?
Yeah, I think that using blended ROAS can ultimately be the number that we are leaning on to determine whether or not our ad spend is effective, especially after the iOS 14 ATT prompt is formally being enforced. At that time, what I know I plan on doing, and I know a lot of other advertisers are planning on doing, is keeping spend the same as it was a couple weeks or even the month before to really gauge how the shift is affecting those in-platform metrics. And then looking at your blended ROAS. Okay, if your blended ROAS was 3 last week and all your Facebook attribution got cut in half, but your blended ROAS is up to a 3.2, then you know that your ads are actually doing better than they were despite the attribution drop. I think blended ROAS is really going to be kind of a light in the darkness for us during this whole iOS 14 shift. To your point about the doom and gloom surrounding iOS 14, I think that, or at least I like to think that I'm looking at it from a kind of realist perspective. There is going to be a difficult period, and I think it's at least going to be 2 weeks, maybe a month, maybe longer. But we've been spoiled ultimately for so long with the amount of metrics that we can see down to a granular level. You know, this ad has this hook rate, has this add to cart to purchase ratio, and it's been really great and it's been good for optimizing. But advertising has existed long before these metrics were available to us and has been effective long before those metrics were available to us. So I do think that we're going to be able to recover from this and continue to be successful. And I think a huge part of being able to do that is going to be leaning on that blended ROAS or that marketing efficiency ratio.
Exactly. And like I said, it's like taking a step. It's like sort of like the billboard advertising effect or like TV advertising effect. I feel like that's becoming a lot more comparable towards where we're moving. And, you know, in instances where we would see like our blended ROAS going up, I think that's going to be a signal like, oh, we're moving in the right direction creatively. Whereas in the past, we really did have a lot of those lower funnel metrics like add to cart to purchase ratio, landing page view to add to cart, which is really going to be disappearing for at least users that have opted out of iOS 14. So next, what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, Heather, is I would really love for you to go through the awesome table that you made of a few D2C ecom clients and just like show us like what that data says and like walk us through this. I was so glad that you had pulled this out. And, you know, this is the kind of data that Heather has been sharing in a lot of her articles, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that myself, as someone who's reading, you know, tons of these articles every day, I noticed that a lot of them don't really have any hard data to back them up with. And as advertisers, okay, I want to see the numbers. Well, what does blended ROAS look like for DTC clients? What does the frequency look like? What does the attribution look like? What attribution windows are you actually using? So I've really been trying to incorporate that in the articles that I've been posting through Thesis. So here we have a look at 5 brands that I pulled the data for February of 2021. They're all direct-to-consumer e-commerce clients, but they are from different industries. So they don't have, you know, a one-to-one comparison. I pulled their total social spend, which I'm just defining as, you know, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, all of that combined into social, and separating that out against search spend, which is essentially just Google and Bing spend, the big two. Then we have total ad spend and, of course, blended ROAS. So I really just wanted everyone to see the kind of blended ROAS numbers that we're looking at. It's nothing crazy. We're not getting 11s. We're not getting 12s.
Oh, those were the days.
Yeah. It's really in between, I'd say about like 1.5 to 3 is what we're looking at on average across all of our clients.
And to like hammer a point home, the ones that are at like a 1.5, does that mean that they're doing worse than the ones that are at a 3? Or like, how does that shake out on the ground level?
Yeah, well, it depends on the markup, right? So for some clients, a lower ROAS is more profitable than it is for others. I will say that the particular client here, interestingly enough, that is the lowest ROAS, hasn't been a brand that has existed for very long. So I would definitely take that into consideration. If you've been in the market for longer, you really get your advertising down, it's going to be easy to get that higher ROAS that you're looking for. If you're new, I mean, as all of us know, it's going to take a little bit of time to get those wheels rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Number one, thank you so much for putting all this together for MER and Blended ROAS. Thanks for coming on the show. And also, just thank you so much for creating content that does have that data-driven analytical wing, because I really do think that's something that's been missing a lot in the content that is being created for media buyers. So thank you so much. And I'll definitely have you back on the show.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, I'm happy to share the data that we have. And I really encourage other advertisers, like we are all in this together.
Yes.
So let's get through this iOS 14 update together. Share your tips, share your hacks, share your insights. Like let's really, really lean into the community to get through this and keep our clients profitable.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more. I really wish that more advertisers would share their quote unquote secret sauce and share their data.
So I forgot to fill in an outro. Heather, thank you so much for coming on the show. And thank you to everyone who made it to the end of this video. If you liked the interview format, please let me know, because I'm interested in doing more interviews with more people in this paid social space so that we can give you more data and also give you more tips and insights from people who are actually doing it every single day. If you have any questions about Blended ROAS or about Supermetrics, hit me up in the comments below. Thanks everyone. See you next week.